Here for our regularly scheduled Garden City Council meeting, Monday, January 26th. And Clerk, certify me, please.
This meeting has been noticed in accordance with Idaho Code 74-204.
Call roll, please.
Councilmember Carver Herbert. Present. Councilmember Jorgensen. Here. Councilmember Page.
Here.
Councilmember Rasmussen.
Here.
Join me in pledging allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. Council President Page.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's some complication with this consent agenda insofar as we have a mix of council members that participated in some of the meetings and a council member that didn't. We have a council member that testified in a meeting. So I think we need to go through this by line item and determine who needs to abstain from what.
Okay. We did, just as a note, we did move the one regarding DSRFY 2025-008, which is the decision document for the Bible College off of the consent agenda, and it is now listed as special business as item 1. So, so we did do that, and then let's go through the consent agenda.
Councilmember Carver Herbert, is there anything you wish to abstain from?
Yes, I wish to abstain from agenda item E1 and E2. I was not a council member at the time of the January 10th, 2026 meeting, and the January 12th, 2026 meeting, I was only present at the very end of the meeting after being sworn in. So I'd like to abstain.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
Yes, Mr. Waters.
Mayor, Council President, to try to answer your question, I think Councilmember Carver Herbert could do this a couple different ways. The easiest way was if she just abstained from voting on the entire consent agenda, and then you don't have to parse it up. The other option, if she does want to vote on some of those items, then we'd have to pull them out off the consent and move them into the regular meeting. So the easiest thing would be for her to just abstain on the consent agenda.
And that unfortunately wouldn't give her a voice on the items that she may wish to comment about, items 3 through 7. Would you prefer that we break the consent agenda apart?
I think as I was thinking about it, if there were for any reason any of the council members had an interest in discussing these, I would definitely want to participate in that discussion. If it was really the intent of the rest of the council to move forward and approve the consent agenda in total, then I'm fine abstaining with the entire agenda. Although I do view these as being fairly significant matters that it might be beneficial to have my voice part of this.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Page.
Let's take up these items individually. Council, as to item E1, do I have a motion there?
I would move to approve.
Second. Mr. Mayor, we have a motion and a second on E1.
All in favor, say aye.
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 This is where I say abstain.
Yes, you'd say abstain.
Abstain.
If you want to abstain, yes. Councilmember, yes.
Item number E2, this is the approval of minutes from January 12th, 2026. Do I have a motion there?
I would move to approve item E2, minutes from January 12th.
Sorry. I would second.
Mr. Mayor, we have a motion and a second on E2.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? No.
Abstain.
Mr. Mayor, item E3 is an extension of building permit The application number is BLD FY 2022-009. And it's multi-part, and it goes through 00025. So this is a series in E3. I guess let's. Is there a motion? And then I know I have some discussion points on this too.
Council President,
Yes.
I would move to approve as part of the consent agenda, item E3, which is as you mentioned, extension of building permits BLD FY 2022-9 through BLD FY 2022-25.
And I would second.
We have a motion, a second, any discussion on the topic?
Mr. Mayor, yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, point of order.
Ms. Waters?
Any council member can pull any item off the consent without, I mean, just one person on the council voting to take something off the consent, they can do that for discussion. So if Council President Page wants to pull that off the consent, I'd request a motion to move it into the regular meeting, and then you all can discuss it at that time.
Councilmember President Page?
Mr. Mayor, I'd vote to move item E3, E5 from the consent agenda.
E3 and E5, okay.
And add it.
And add it to the regular business of the agenda. So I guess that's going to be.
Well, should we just, one thought on that, Council President Page, just move those to 1 and 2, and then
Very good.
F1 would become 3.
Very good.
So that we just kind of keep that list going in the same order. So let's move 3 and 5 down to special business action items 1 and 2. And then may I have a motion on the consent, remaining of the consent agenda 4, 6, and 7.
Does anyone else wish to pull something off? Is there a motion then? I would move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
And I would second.
Mr. Mayor, just a point, I have the motion from Councilmember Page to move the items, but I don't have a second or a vote.
Good catch.
I would second Council President's motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion carries. We'll move those down to special business. Okay.
On the table, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion on those points? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We will now move to F, special business. And we will start with extension of the building permits for BLDYFY 2022-0009.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In reviewing the packet, I noticed it was called out quite nicely by the Development Services Department that that this series of projects is a little bit unique because it's partially built and partially remains unbuilt. And this is the 8th extension request. Am I right on that? Maybe.
Would you like Director Thornborough to come to the
Please.
podium?
Mayor, Jacobs Council President Page. Yes, that is correct. These building permits are partially constructed at this point in time. It's my understanding they have their foundation, or at least some of their foundation work in. Building code is pretty quick about the extension turnaround timeframes. It's every 60 days at this point in time. So you have seen this matter come back before you many times recently. And I stand for further questions if you have further questions.
So thank you for that first. And second, whenever I look at these consent agenda, because we did move as a council to move these to consent agenda where possible. And I apologize for pulling this off, but previously I would look for the statement of cause, right, of good cause, because I think that's the standard, is it's good cause. And in the statement that's given, that good cause seemed anecdotal. I'm not exactly sure how to interpret that good cause. Trying to get the exact language, excuse me.
Mayor Jacobs, Council President page, I believe on page 16, there's the extension request.
Thank you.
At the bottom.
Director Thornborough, can you just describe what work, part of it's completed, and you said the foundations are currently laid? And so the extensions are to build upon those foundations, if I understand that correctly?
Mayor Jacobs, that is what I understand as well. I haven't gone out there to verify if there's more than that. I know that this application has sat idle for some time. But I do believe that there is at least foundation work that's been done to some level.
Yeah, I just so in the cause statement or the justification, continued volatility of interest rates has resulted in continued significant delays beyond the applicant's control. Additionally, the applicant and its contractor have had a difficult time procuring materials at a reasonable cost. Although it continues to improve, the high cost and lack of available construction materials continues to result in significant delays beyond the applicant's control. Finally, the applicant remains engaged in locating a new construction management firm. So there's a lot happening here. It sounds like there's not an active construction partner. Is that correct?
Mayor Jacobs, Council President Page, that is what it sounds like to me as well. I do know this particular project has changed hands a couple of times. And currently there's an attorney's office that we're interacting with.
I just, and again, this is an anecdotal statement, but as a council, how are we to point to the marketplace as a reason? There's another application that we will pull up next that talks about this. Well, we'll get to it when we get to it. But as a council, things that are beyond the control of any of us as a city, and indeed beyond the control of the entire marketplace, it's just this uncertainty and unavailability. Are we to have just an unfinished project until it becomes 2012 again? I don't think that's acceptable, right? And I appreciate that it's half built, but what do we do? Like, what's the solution here?
President of the council, do you have a recommendation?
That's the problem, I don't.
So unfortunately, I do believe that the issues outlined are valid. As a business person that is heavily impacted by supply chain issues, varying interest rates and unknowns, there is some uncertainty in continuing business, and make no mistake that the development is a business, correct? I agree that it cannot go into perpetuity. However, I think reasonably, in my opinion, if we as reasonable council members and business people observe the same that's being presented in the explanation, I think it merits an approval. If there's a vehicle to establish a deadline and we say, okay, you've got 90 days, that's beyond the 60-day typical window to prove that this has substantial move forward strategy, or then what? Then, we remand this back to the open market. What
Right.
happens if we say we're done waiting?
And Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Jorgensen, that's my point. We have no alternative. There's not, we can't tell people what to do with their property, correct? This isn't something that's really, I appreciate your point that perhaps we could extend this to a more reasonable time. I don't know what the solution is. Are you privy to what the issue is they're working with their council?
Mayor, Council President Page, I'm not privy to the reason this has languished as it has. I do want to note that if the building permit does expire, to further complicate the conversation, then the work that's already been done, if it's been approved and can continue, would have to go back and be re-reviewed and maybe be brought into new code conformance standards. And so an additional building permit, if the building permit were to expire, I don't know for certain, but could potentially have additional effects on the already approved building structures. But I apologize, that was way more than what you requested, Council President, but that is something also to keep in mind with the conversation.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
with your permission, Mr. Wadums,
Councilmember Johnson.
Mayor, Councilmember.
what are the legal remedies? If an applicant continues to request ongoing extensions and it becomes unreasonable, what are the remedies available to the city?
Well, Mayor, Councilmember Jorgensen, it would really depend on what the wording of the code says. Last time I reviewed the code, there had to be a just cause. Is that the standard? Just cause for the extension? Is that correct?
And Mayor, Mr. Wadums, I believe the code has changed over time. So I would have to look and see what the code said at this time, but good cause, just cause does tend to be through the different iterations of the code.
Well, Mayor, Councilmember Jorgensen, the answer would be whatever our current version of code says. So if the standard is just cause, then the council has to decide whether 8 extensions and a slowdown in the economy is just cause. I think Jenna should probably pull up the standard since the code has changed. But it's how the council interprets that rule. At some point in time, is it just cause? I mean, is 8 extensions just cause, or is 10? And is it kind of, does the market control it? Probably a little bit. And I also know there's a concern nationally about zombie subdivisions. The city, I'm sure the elected officials do not want zombie subdivisions. And so the incentive is to get it built. But at some point in time, you're putting good money on top of bad. I don't know what the analogy is. I mean, at some point in time, is there still just cause? Is that the standard? I'm sorry.
Mayor, I have looked at the decision document. The city's decided to be using the standards at which time the application was approved. And at that time, it was good cause. So yes, a just cause or a good cause, but the wording is good cause.
So, Councilmember Jorgensen, to answer your question, it's how you interpret that term right there. I would recommend that your interpretation of that term is applied consistently among all applications. Mr. Jones's application, for example, should be treated the same as the one that's Creation Row. They should all be treated the same. So that's how you interpret that term.
So, Mr. Wadums, just a question for clarification. I think this one's a little bit unique in that a lot of our extensions are for land that hasn't been developed, right? The dirt's just sitting there, and we're approving extension after extension after extension. And there's no building permits. There's nothing, right? It's just bare dirt. In this case, there's foundations in the ground. So, so then, what happens if you deny the extension and there's foundations in the ground? I'm assuming they would just have to reapply the exact same plans to whatever new code has to be, and then go through that whole process again. And then they still have the existing foundation. So to me, it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges a little bit, right? Because most of our extensions are for just bare dirt. It's like, all right, when are you gonna turn in something, when are you gonna build something versus, we started, the economy went south, prices went up with COVID, right, or whatever reason it was, and now we have a foundation in the ground and we're trying to find the money to put it together. So I think that's one of the things that council has to deliver is that particular, that particular issue with this particular extension, which I think makes it a little bit more complicated for council.
Mayor, council members, if I could just try to answer it this way. The rule is you look at the term and then you look for the definition. If there's no definition and there's no, I don't think there's a definition of the term in this case, then the council has wide latitude and you have discretion to interpret that any way you want to. The courts will give you wide discretion as long as you interpret it consistently and evenly for everybody. So it's really, what I'm saying is it's up to you how you interpret that rule.
And
Mr. Mayor and Mr. Wadhams, potentially,
Yes, Councilman.
Ms. Thornborough. I think the question that I have is going back, it sounds like we could have wide discretion, but I think the biggest thing that's important, as you mentioned, Mr. Wadhams, is the consistency of applying that. And have we been in similar situations where we have applied this standard with really a lack of a true definition? I just would prefer that we try to act consistently. And do we have any guidance on that?
Mayor, Council Carver Herbert, not specifically to your question, but over time, as code has been amended to try to deal with this, perhaps that can give some level of guidance where currently just cause or good cause is defined by force majeure or something that's outside of the applicant's. It's something that they can handle. Mr. Wadhams can probably do much better with
Force
the
majeure
definition.
is Latin for an act of God. I can't remember.
We did
many.
adjust our code last year, the year before, to limit the number of extensions. So if I remember right, it was because they were kind of going in perpetuity, and we said, we as a council decided that we'd like to limit those. But I don't know. I know when we voted on that, I don't know if we had this particular circumstance in mind where there's foundations in the ground. So that's what I think makes it a little different.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we have a motion and a second, and I've made my discussion point. Are there any others?
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question of Ms.
Yes,
Thornborough.
Councilmember Carver.
I think my only other question relating to this perpetual ongoing approvals, does the applicant have to pay a fee each time they request an extension?
Mayor, Councilmember Carver Herbert, yes, the applicant is paying extension fees each time they come before you.
And does that fee cover the costs of reviewing this and putting on the agenda? Because if we're reviewing this every 60 days, it appears to be potentially a staff drain.
Mayor, Council Member Carver Herbert, yes, I do believe that there's adequate fees, particularly at this point. It's almost a copy and paste, change a few dates. And so I do believe that it is covering the cost, but certainly is an additional task for staff to be doing as well.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I think
Councilmember Johnson.
I think that I want to add the fact that part of my decision-making is their precedence. And we certainly have precedence in that in 2021, as the economy was trying to recover out of COVID, we certainly granted a lot of application extensions based on economic impact and the difficulty of the supply chain. I think it would be very difficult to overcome setting that precedent as far as that decision making. The only concern would be the extent that the extensions have been requested. What is unprecedented in my recollection is the amount of time. However, as we've heard this evening, we don't really have a clear-cut remedy. And that is why, in my opinion, and why I vote to approve the extension.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Rasmus.
I guess I would pretty much just echo Councilmember Jorgensen. It's certainly not my preference to have a project in this status for any period of what would be defined as long duration, I guess. But at the same time, with this particular case, in my mind, I don't have any information to go on to act on the length or duration that this has been going on. So, so that's why I don't know. I guess if there was a way in the long term to help council and staff, I don't know what the right word is, encourage progress or anything, whether that's higher fees for extension requests or something like that. I don't know what the answer is. I'm just, but again, I don't feel there's enough information with what we have in front of us to go any other direction than approve the extension request.
Thank you for those comments. Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Council.
the only point that I was thinking as I was reviewing this as well is that there, in comparison to the other requests for extensions, I think the challenge we face as council is that some of these extensions refer back to code that has changed with time. And it has been my understanding, the city's policy to stay within the timeframe of that code of when that application and those permits were applied. And I think that also tends to create some confusion, because if I was reading, obviously shouldn't probably relate this to the other extension requests, but depending upon the period of time that an extension request came up, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Adams, maybe you can correct me on this, is that there may be some more specific guidance in our newer versions of code. Is that correct?
Mayor, Councilmember Carver Herbert, yes, this criteria has been amended and does have some clarity, some additional clarification. Unfortunately, on this application, the application is 8 years old or whatever it is, so we're dealing with a code that's 8 years old as well. But hopefully, I know that the code does provide additional guidance going forward.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, so we had a motion and a second. Clerk, call roll, please.
Councilmember Carver Herbert,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen.
Yes.
Thank you. Extension passes and it is granted. Thank you. That was a healthy discussion. We'll move on to F2, which is now was number 5 on the consent agenda, the extension for Caroline subdivision.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My discussion here is very similar to the last. Here, the reason statement is due to unforeseen conditions in the residential market with unit absorption and construction cost volatility, the project was delayed. In addition, there were many challenges in construction of other projects in Garden City that caused additional delays.
I love we have an AI generated response.
More of the same, and I'm not sure how that points to other projects within Garden City unless it's the same applicant. So it's I don't need to belabor this point, but I'd sure like to see reason statements that have I've seen them before that point to delays in getting a permit from a partner agency, or waiting for agency comments, or waiting for an environmental study, which are things that have a date certain. And I guess that's the part that gives me pause, is this open-ended date and then extension. So I would move that we approve this as well. I just wanted to get my discussion point out.
I would second.
Okay, any further discussion? Clerk, call roll, please.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page.
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert.
Yes.
Motion passes. Moving on to special business item 3 now, approval of DSR FY 2025-008, the decision document. On this particular topic, I was not part of the decision, so I recused myself. So I'm going to do that again, and Council President Page will lead the discussion on this particular item, and I'm going to step out, and then when resolved or voted on it, then I will come back and continue with item 4.
Thank you. Council members, I would request a brief recess so that I may confer with council.
Mayor, Council President, I think Council Member Carver Herbert also had something to say about this.
That is correct. I just wasn't sure if I need to address that to the departing recused or to the oncoming
Good point.
presiding.
I think I'm in charge now.
Councilman President Page, I recuse myself. Although I don't have a direct legal conflict of interest as defined by Idaho law, after careful consideration, I have determined that my prior advocacy regarding this specific application could reasonably create an appearance of conflict, particularly as it relates to considering this with complete impartiality. Therefore, I recuse myself from deliberations, discussions, and votes related to DSR FY 2025-0008, and I too will step out with the mayor.
Thank you so much. Council, let's recess for 10 minutes. Sounds good.
We are back on the record.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and resume this discussion. Before us is the decision document and approval of that. This is for project DSR FY 2025-0008. The record will show that the mayor has recused himself and Councilmember Carver Herbert has recused herself. Is there anyone else in the remaining members that needs to recuse themselves or announce a conflict? No on both.
No.
Thank you. I don't either. Has everyone had a chance to review the proposed language of the decision document that staff has given us?
Yes.
Yes.
For the purposes of our discussion today, I would like to focus on areas 4, 5, and 6. That was the contested portion that we talked about in our deliberation. And I have prepared some words that are taken directly from some of the transcript that you heard me already say, but I'm hoping we can review the language here for possible adoption into the decision document. And the reason why is it points exactly to items on the record. And that allows us to be able to show where our deliberations were, who we drew from, and provide a reasoned statement that that if it were to go to judicial review, they wouldn't have to find the needle in the haystack, as was a criticism on a Boise case that we're all familiar with. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and just read here for findings 4 and 5. And excuse me for just reading this. As testified to by attorney Kenley Grover, who represents residents in a neighboring area around a 4-story building next to Willowbrook's 55 and older years of age community of patio homes and single-story homes, that approval would have an adverse impact on those properties, especially when it comes time to resell them. The council agreed with Terry Dean, the president of Willowbrook HOA, that when considering the pictures that she presented of a similar development as an example of what property would look like, the development does not look similar to what's in the neighborhood. She presented a picture showing the view of 3rd and 4th-story buildings, being able to look right down into someone's backyard during the night and day. The HOA wanted a concrete 6-foot wall because that would help with the lighting issue of a 4-story building. I think that was light pollution. We agree with Ms. Dean that a 4-story building, the transition and scale do not fit in with the surrounding neighborhoods because there are no buildings taller than 2 stories west of Glenwood next to the single-family homes, other than Strawberry Glen Apartments, which are less than 4 stories tall. As testified by Katie Jennings, the project is not compatible with the neighborhood and scale of this development. We reviewed her exhibit, which included 1, 2, and 3-story homes in that area. On her exhibit, the color blue represented single-story homes. The color red was for 2-story buildings, and a few 3-story homes were represented with the color yellow. The color green indicated commercial single-story, except for the library and city hall, which was indicated by a red dot. The exhibit and testimony indicated that 83% of the homes in this neighborhood are single-family homes surrounding Boise Bible College property. There are only 5 that are adjacent to that are 2-story. Most every other home around the development is a single-story house. The current neighborhoods are single-story homes, which is what drew some homeowners to the area. In comparison, Ms. Jennings presented an exhibit indicating that the scale and intensity of the apartments at the Village and Meridian, which are 4 stories, and that scale did not match this neighborhood. The 4-story development would have balconies looking down into people's homes in the area of Marigold Street. And people are considering moving away so that they do not have to deal with a new 4-story development looking down into the yards. We actually heard testimony of one family that has hired a realtor to market their property. Ms. Jennings presented a picture of the Boise Bible College from their house in a cul-de-sac that revealed what the view would be like if there was a 4-story development next to it. The picture revealed that the proposed design was not compatible with the neighborhood in scale. She also presented different angles of the apartments and different pictures of her subdivision so that council could review the homes as like for like. The closest development in scale up to that area is the Strawberry Glen Apartments, which only has 3 stories and 2-story apartments with carports similar to the instant application, except not as tall. Ms. Jennings took measurements of various buildings for comparison. One of the 2 proposed 4-story buildings in this application, building number 2, is only 80 feet from a neighbor's fence line, which is too tall at that distance. As stated by Jeannie Jackson-Himes' testimony, the Garden City Development Code states that compliance with the minimum standards does not automatically ensure acceptance of an application. We agree with her that findings 4 and 5 are not met in this application. Some of us agree, and I'll get to that. The maximum is 35 units per acre and the analysis does not end here. However, the maximum is 35 units per acre if the design of the project is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood in scale and intensity, and if it does not adversely impact the surrounding neighborhood, and if it has features and building form that are compatible with the neighborhood. All this public testimony indicated that 2 4-story apartment buildings next apartments are not compatible in scale with mostly 1-story homes. 236 apartments have been requested next to subdivisions of single-family detached homes. What is proposed is an urban design in a more traditional neighborhood. As testified to, the current four-story design would adversely impact the surrounding neighborhoods in terms of light pollution and noise. It is part of the record that the city has proposed a rezone to this area to a lower density of 15 units per acre, and that the rezone is currently making its way through the planning process. However, it has not been rezoned yet, but still the scale does not fit the surrounding neighborhoods, and four-story design is not compatible, which is evident from the drone photo that was presented on December 30th, 2025. Some of us agree with Linda Guro, who testified that 4 stories is not compatible considering its proposed buffer to the surrounding homes. And the scale is massively different than the neighborhood. The 4-story application is for a suburban apartment complex in a more rural area. The 4-story building would be looking down into her home, and she already deals with light coming in from the Boise Bible College, impacting her neighborhood. Excuse me. Matthew Delpko made a valid point when he testified that he is concerned that the four-story scope of the project is not compatible because it would change the character of the neighborhood adversely and could decrease his property value. Jonathan Perry similarly testified that while he is not against the Boise Bible College building some apartments at this location, but even though the dorms that are currently there are only 2 stories, there are still light that shines into his bedroom window, and 4 stories would shine into their house even more. Once it was announced there was going to be a 4-story building that was significantly different than what was initially suggested, Jonathan Perry indicated that more concerns were raised in the neighborhood. Ken Dillman has lived in the area for over 20 years. He testified that having a 4-story complex is more for an urban development rather than a residential, which is not consistent with the neighborhood. Some of us agree with him that 4 stories does not fit the comprehensive plan in that area and does not fit the neighborhood. Sandra Chess testified about her knowledge with a particular appraisal for a single family residence and indicated the character would suffer if next to a 4-story 236 unit complex. She indicated that the underwriter would ask the person to go back and find a comparable that is next to 4 stories because it would affect the value she asserted. If you were looking for identical properties and one of them was next to a 4-story 230 unit apartment that was 1/2 mile away, she indicated that most people would pay a little more to live further away so that they don't have to live next to a 4-story building. Other residents testified that the development was for additional student housing. It would be consistent with what was on the property and the zoning at the time, which was approximately 15 units per acre. But 4 stories was inconsistent with the neighborhood. Jordana Trent echoed that sentiment in written testimony. Based on the above testimony and our deliberations, it's clear that diversity of housing is a stated goal in the comprehensive plan. However, there is a lack of compatibility when considering the scale of 4 stories in this area of town. The Jennings evidence is compelling that indicated that the 919 single-family homes in the area of Garden City, 83% were single-story, 17 were 2-story, and 0% were 3 stories or taller. Were taller than 3 stories. The exhibit showed that there are only 18 multifamily housing structures within 2 developments. There were, within that, there were 3 that were 3 stories. Therefore, 4 stories is too tall or high in that area of town. So I just wanted to read that into the record. That gives exact statements that I pointed to in my deliberation. And Councilmember Jorgensen echoed many of these points and added additional points. Councilmember Jorgensen, in reviewing this decision document and what I just read into the record, would you have anything else to add?
No, thank you, President of Council.
Thank you. And Councilmember Rasmussen, there was a record that he dissented and he gave his reasons why. And do you care to restate those, or do you want the record to stand?
I would let the record stand. I have some questions, and because I dissented, I'm not sure if it matters if I have questions on this piece. So if that makes sense, if I dissented at that meeting, do I have standing to comment on this? Okay.
Council President, Council Member Rasmussen, yes, dissenting opinions do have the right to be heard. And as much detail as you would like in this written decision to reflect your thoughts and your deliberations, that would be appropriate.
Okay.
And if you want staff to add your dissent in the writing for the record, that's something staff can do.
Okay.
And it'd be reflected that that is the opinion of one out of the 3 decision makers.
Okay. I don't know. I mean, I have already said that I think what I said in my dissent can stand. However, I appreciate the time you put into this. There's a lot that you did here. Some of the things, though, I was just thinking maybe could be reworded, or I just want to bring them up. How's that? So early on, and this may not matter, but it says in the first paragraph, about 2/3 of the way down, we agreed with Ms. Steen that as a 4-story building, the transition and scale do not fit in with the surrounding neighborhood. So the majority of the council agrees, something like that. I mean, that's not a big deal, but that was just something.
It is a big
sounds
deal,
unanimous.
and it should be noted more properly
Yeah.
that 2 council members find this.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. That was not a big deal.
Council President, just a point of order on that. Typically, at least in a court of law, what you would see is you see the opinion at the very top. It would say this is a plurality opinion, or this is a 2-to-1 opinion, with Councilmember Rasmussen dissenting. So it's clear that these opinions are of the other 2 council members and not you.
Of the majority.
And then if you want, in judicial circles, if you wanted to have a dissenting opinion attached to this, that's something that you could do.
Okay.
Unless, I would imagine the other council members would not fight you on that. Anyways.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think it should be reflected on the very top that this is a 2-to-1 decision, with Council President Page and Council Member Jorgensen voting to remand based on these points, and then Council Member Rasmussen disagreeing and dissenting.
Okay. And that all sounds great to me. So thank you. I appreciate that. And then on the second page, I'm not going to point to any specific piece of the work you did. I just, well, there was one word I underlined. So it's in the second paragraph, right in the middle of that second line. The word massively is in there, different than the neighborhood. So
How about if we strike that word?
yeah, I mean, if you're fine with it, I'm just bringing it up as a point of discussion. I'll just explain why I'm bringing it up, because we at the last meeting talked about going from 4 to 3 stories. So I'm not sure massively is going down 1 level. So that's why I bring it up.
Fair point. It's a 1/4 reduction.
Yeah. And then there's some count in there about how big the complex is in the 3rd paragraph. And then I believe the word density was used up in the 1st paragraph on the 2nd page. I'm all on the 2nd page now. So we did not address density. So I just wonder if some caution needs to be put in play if the word density is used, and we talk about the count of units versus just the number of floors.
Councilmember Rasmussen, that particular piece refers to the Jeannie Jackson Heim study, where she was pointing to our RM, proposed RM that does address density. And so I think, what this was her language saying, hey, you've already, are making a move for this part of town to be less dense and less tall. And that if we need to strike that from this record, yes, because we chose not to act on density.
Right. And that's the only reason I bring it up. I'm not sure if we need to, but it seems like possibly something that should be considered between the three of us. And that's why I bring it up.
I support that notion to strike density from this argument.
President of the council, the clarity that I would offer is if we're referring to public testimony and the public testimony included comments regarding density, and we're quoting and referring to that testimony, it would be included. The density was not a factor as rendered by our decisions, a part of our conclusions.
Very good. Even better. Thank you. Staff, will you be able to work that in?
Yes, of course.
What else?
Actually, that was it.
Okay, I want to talk about the remaining portion and just for everyone's benefit. I know the council members, we already know that there are some people in the room. Staff blesses us in these staff reports with language that is sometimes a boilerplate language, and there is mention in some of the rest of this document that we are working for approval. And I just want to make sure that the language that follows, that we're pulling approval language out and replacing that with remand, desire to remand, because we did not vote to approve. Is that fair?
Council President, if I could, just a point of order on that. I think what you're talking about is on pages, starting on page 105 of the packet, or page 22 of the draft decision. There's all these, I'm sorry, starting specifically on page 23 and 106 after the decision. There's all these conditions, and they're called conditions of approval. And so the rest of the document is all conditions of approval. The issue is this is not an approval. So I don't know how you could have conditions of approval when it's not an approval. And so based on your concerns, my recommendation is if you want to go forward tonight, you just strike those conditions of approval, because those were not even discussed in your deliberations.
Yeah, I think they would be more suited for a future decision document where the aim is to approve. Are we okay striking those conditions?
Yes.
Yes.
And just Director Thornborough, is that proper?
Council President Page, members of the council, yes, you certainly could do that. I do want to point out on page 106 of the packet, or 23 of the decision document, the first matter that I would suggest not striking would be the matters to be addressed upon remand.
Correct, and that's what my legal recommendation on that one would be too.
Thank you, I missed that.
Thank you.
Good eye.
Thank you.
Let's not strike that, because we are trying here in this document to give, as we're required by code, to give an opportunity for the applicant to cure.
And if I may, just point of clarification as well, towards the end of the decision document, there is that boilerplate language that talks about items such as the ability for reconsideration, et cetera. This is not a final document, but we tend to keep that in all decisions, whether they be recommendations or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. So is there a motion to approve as amended?
I so move.
And I will second that. So we have a motion and a second. Discussion, any more discussion?
Just a question for Council President, for Mr. Wadham. So it's maybe a silly question. Since I dissented, do I dissent again, or are we just approving language what we just talked about?
Council President, Council Member Rasmussen, I think that your dissent has been reflected in the record, and so I don't think you need to be voting on this any further. I mean, you could say I'm dissenting and I don't agree with the decision, and that would be reflected in the decision.
Okay.
So in terms of a motion to approve the decision, you could say I dissent, and then it would show as 2-1 that you don't agree with the wording of it.
Okay.
I mean, if you like the word, I suppose it's just a little clunky if you say I agree with the wording. I vote to approve the wording when I don't agree with it. You know, so.
Oh, okay. Okay,
right,
that's
so,
what I'm trying to get at.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
So you don't agree with
Because
the wording. I would say I
the
don't.
dissension has already happened. So I'm
Right.
like, are we
Yep.
just doing words now? So
I would anticipate there'd be a motion to approve as amended in a second, and then I would anticipate you would vote against that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yes, of course.
Will the clerk call roll?
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen.
No.
Thank you. So the ayes have it in this case by majority. And let's bring in Mayor Jacobs.
And if I could, Council President, before we do that, I saw the look on the clerk's eyes that she was wondering where your email came from. So he did email me earlier today, and it's going to be included. I have a copy to include in the record.
Okay.
With that, would you like me to bring the mayor?
And Councilmember Carver Herbert.
Yes.
And I'll
Thank you,
just say
Councilmembers.
real quickly, as you're bringing them in, this will take 2 seconds. Just thank you for the discussion and leading that tonight. I think it was done well, so thank you.
Thank you.
nice
It
of
of course always feels clunky when you're the person doing something like that. So thank you for the kind words.
Yep.
Great. For those in the audience, that would conclude the discussion on that application. The rest is going to be a pretty exciting conversation.
All right, thank you, everybody, for taking over Council President Page. We're going to continue on with F4, which is the nomination and election of a council president for the calendar year 2026. That's the pleasure of the council.
Mr. Mayor, and based on an outstanding performance as just very recently demonstrated by his thorough summary of the result of an application, I would nominate current president of the council, James Page, to continue in that role as the president of the council moving forward.
Enthusiastic second.
Okay. Do I have any further discussion on that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for the motion and the second. I am honored to have this opportunity to continue serving with people I hold in high esteem. Any of you would be very suited for this as well. And so it humbles me to have your vote. Thank you.
And I would just like to say that I'm very glad that you made that decision as well, because Council President Page has been wise counsel to me, and having him and that stability as the new mayor is really important to me, and I think everybody else recognizes as well. So I'm glad that you made that decision. So with that, we have a motion and a second, and clerk call roll, please.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Council President Page, for taking on that role for another year. Okay, moving on to item 5 now. On F is the appointments to committees. And Mr. Wadhams, I think we're gonna, remind me again, do we need to make a motion on each one?
Mayor, I think that the only one that has a resolution on it is the BRT, and so that's draft resolution 1233-26. Because that is a resolution, I would recommend that you take that away from the other ones, and there be a motion on that specifically because it's a resolution. And then the other ones you could take in group or in a lump
What
sum.
about F? Do we need to vote on that one as well independently, or can we do group that? We want to do that separate?
You could do it either way, Mr. Mayor.
Let's do this. Let's just do the library liaison, the ACCEM, which stands for Ada County City Emergency Management, Compass, and BVEP. BVEP is the Boise Valley Economic Partnership. So for the library liaison, I've asked Council Member Kent Rasmussen to be the new liaison, or to continue to be the liaison for the library. He's held that role and would like to continue to do that. As mayor, I will be the representative for the ACCEM, Compass, and BVEP. At some point, once I kind of get my feet underneath me a little bit more, there may be opportunities for other council members to participate on those as elected officials on one of those committees. But we'll see how that goes. I just haven't been part of any of them really yet, so I want to, except for BVEP, I'm familiar with. So let's have a motion for A, B, C, and E, please, and then we'll move on to a BRT and the URA board.
Mr. Mayor,
Council President Page.
as to item 5A, B, C, 3. I'm sorry.
A, B, C, and
It's 5 now.
it's Council President 5. Yep.
Yeah, so 5A, B,
Keep up.
Sorry, yeah, sorry.
A, B, C,
It's numbered.
E,
And that's
and A, B, C, and E. I would move to approve the mayor's choices for committees.
I would second.
okay. Any further discussion? Clerk, call roll, please.
Councilmember Page?
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert? Yes. Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes.
The next one, item D, BRT, that is just a resolution appointing a board member, and I will be taking that on as well. But they asked for a resolution on that.
Mr. Mayor, they did.
Charles?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the resolution's on page 171 of your packet. And what it says is that the mayor is going to be the primary representative, and then Jenna Thornborough would be the alternative representative. And it's true that BRT wanted a resolution, so that's why this one looks a little bit different. I will also say for the record that this is just their template. I did not draft this, you can tell, because the right margin is not justified. So I know which ones I've drafted and which ones I haven't. This is a template from them, and I did not draft it, but I think otherwise it's appropriate to pass.
And my understanding is we don't really need to read it. We can just pass it with a motion.
That's correct, Mr.
Can I have a motion to have your mayor represent the BRT?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve resolution number 1233-26.
And I would second.
Any discussion on the motion? This one, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? None. That passes. We'll move on to item F. And this is where I have asked Council Member Rasmussen to take my place on the Urban Renewal Board and complete my term. And so I need a motion to approve my appointment of Councilmember Rasmussen to the URA board.
Mr. Mayor, I so move.
And I would second.
Okay, now let's take clerk call roll, please.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert?
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes.
Councilmember Page?
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor, just a quick thank you for entrusting me in that role. So thank you.
All right, you're going to be great. And so I think I thoroughly enjoyed my time on that on board, and I think you'll enjoy it as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for that, for those appointments. We're moving on to G. So ordinances, resolution, and contracts are first. Is,
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I apologize for interrupting. I did want to take a moment
Oh, I'm sorry. I
to
skipped one.
discuss staff reports.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I crossed it off in 6, and because I crossed it off, I thought we had already done it. So I skipped over that. Thank you for correcting me on that. So we have our November and December monthly staff reports. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I have previously asked for an update regarding a pending issue with a perpetrator of violence against our law enforcement officers and canine. And I would like to, if possible, get an update on that status. And secondly, I would also ask for an update regarding those that vandalized the Pam Beaumont Park. I see that there were juveniles arrested, and I'm wondering what the disposition is.
Okay, on the first topic, Chief Stambaugh is not here, so.
Lieutenant O'Gorman maybe could tell you, or I could help him out too.
Yeah, so are you familiar with, what was the first topic, Councilmember Johnson?
A perpetrator that
bit our dog
and was violent against law enforcement officers.
Mr. Mayor. Okay, so we'll do that maybe next.
I can, well, I know that I don't know if it's Mayor, Council Member Jorgensen. I can find out the ultimate issue for you. I know that he was prosecuted by the Ada County Prosecutor's Office. I think that he took a deal and did not go to trial. I think he's probably in prison right now, but I can find that information for you, and I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
And then do you have an update on the vandals?
I do, on the vandals. Mayor, council members, as you know, our Pam Beaumont Park was vandalized a couple months ago. That's working its way through the juvenile court system. It's alleged that a couple juveniles did that. You can get the details, I think, on ktvb.com. Because they are juveniles, we have to be careful when we use their initials typically and not their full names because they are under 18. The restitution was significant, and by that I mean that what the city would have to pay to fix the park. We do have insurance through ICRIMP, so ICRIMP, it's an ICRIMP insurance claim. Our contractor, it's about $77,000 to repair the park. The city, we are going to have a $10,000 deductible. It's going to be out of our pocket. So I have been coordinating with the Ada County Prosecutor's Office. The city has requested $10,000 in restitution to get that deductible back through the juvenile court system. Our council president, James Page, has drafted a victim impact statement that will be presented to the court. It's Judge Teresa Gardunia that's presiding, and she's a very good, fair judge. I've known her for 20 some years, and so it's Judge Gardunia presiding. We had 2 pretrial conferences last week, and I believe they were both continued. And so nothing, these 2, when they get to sentencing, the victim impact statement will be read into the record. Mr. Page or anybody else on the council would also have the right to be there as a victim, even though it's a juvenile proceeding. If you wanted to go to juvenile court, I would go with you. I could find the court dates. And then the way restitution works is if they agree to it or Judge Gardunia orders it, then they will set up a payment plan and hopefully pay off that $10,000. The juvenile code says the parents can also be on the hook for that restitution. So I would anticipate the restitution order would say that the juveniles or their parents have to pay the $10,000 deductible. And then ICRIMP will probably also request restitution for the $66,000 that they are going to be out. So this is one of those unfortunate things where some kids caused a lot of damage, and we've seen it up in the allegedly, yes, of course, allegedly, and you've seen it up in the up by Table Rock and stuff like that. And this is our own version of something like that. The police did a great job investigating it. The Ada County Prosecutor's Office is doing a great job prosecuting it, and I anticipate it'll go through sentencing in the near future. And Council President is correct, absolutely. They are just accused at this point in time. They have not been found guilty of anything. So that hopefully answers your question.
Mr. Wadhams, it does, and I appreciate the very thorough and detailed information. Clearly, I take this very seriously, as everybody does, I'm sure, in the city. And for me, it's particularly painful as I drive by every single day. I do have a follow-up question, Mr. Mayor. Do we have cameras trained on the playground?
I know the answer.
In that park? Oh, Mr. Wadhams.
I was gonna answer, but there we go.
Oh, do you, I'm sorry.
No, no.
Your very first, Mr. Mayor, your first meeting you're presiding over, basically. And so my information is yes, but it was broken. And so it's fixed or will be fixed. That's through the Public Works Department. And so there was supposed to be video, but it was not working at the time.
Thank
And
you.
then we have a new system that's being purchased, correct, Director? We'll have Director Schmidt give us a quick update on that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Mayor, council members, we just got approval today. It was actually signed. Urban Renewal is offered to purchase some updated camera equipment for that park to give us a better view of the playground area. Even though the video was not functioning, the camera footage that we get from the playground is enough to give the police department something to go on. It's not quite, it doesn't capture as much as it possibly should. So the new camera equipment though will be state of the art. Plus we've put in a few policy changes to make sure that cameras around the city function. So we check them more often now. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dirk.
Any further questions on the staff reports? No, thank you for doing that work, Council President Page, on the victim statement, and
It was my honor.
Mr. Wadhams, and I never thought I'd preside. I had not heard about the man bites dog story, so I wasn't really familiar with that. But, we'll get it. He's in prison, so that's a good thing. So, we like our police dogs here in Garden City. Which dog was it, Kano, or was it? Yeah. Who would be dumb enough to bite that dog? That's all I gotta say. If you've met Kano, it's not a dog you want to bite. Okay, moving on to item G. We are going to have a public meeting, a public hearing and reading on this. This is the Ada County impact fees. And we have a representative from the county to speak with us, Mr. Rutherford. And so I invite you to the podium and talk to council about these fees.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Steve Rutherford, work for the county commissioners at Ada County. Address is 200 East Front Street in Boise. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you for sitting through this. It's getting your turn.
It's good. I haven't had a real council meeting. You guys had a real council meeting tonight. That's fantastic. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is kind of another stop on this long, painful journey that the statutes in Idaho and the Constitution particularly require of cities when they're going to kind of adopt county impact fees. The trouble is our ordinances at the county don't apply in city limits. And it's probably a good thing, but it also leads to this really painful, protracted process where you all have to do it yourself and adopt it effectively as your own impact fee. And thank you to Jenna and Charlie for working through this process. We were on the phone on Friday afternoon, working through kind of how this is all going to work. I'm very thankful for the partnership. So are the commissioners. Rest assured, they really appreciate you all doing this. We're at the point where you've adopted the capital improvement plans incorporated them into your comp plan. Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Mayor. And now you're at a point where you'll approve an ordinance, hopefully. That ordinance may at some point be split into two, but ultimately it is adopting this as your impact fee on our behalf. And then the last step will be to adopt or approve two intergovernmental agreements, one with the EMS district and then the other one with the county for the jail and for the coroner impact fees. But I think we're at a point where this ordinance kind of describes how things are going to work. The appeals will come to us. We'll of course indemnify and hold you all harmless in the event that a developer isn't pleased with how the process works. We worked out on Friday that the developer or the folks that are bringing developments forward, you all would direct them to us we'll do the calculations and we'll collect the fee. So you don't have to get your hands dirty with money. You don't have to keep it accounting. You don't have to worry about getting money down to the county. And that way it's really easy for you. And again, if there's an appeal or a special assessment or a special calculation, our folks will do that. And of course, we'll owe you annually some audits, so you know what's happening with this money, how much the county has collected on your behalf. And then, of course, per that statute, we've got to spend those within 8 years. There's a process where we can ask for 3 more years, but those accountings will come to you on an annual basis, and so you shouldn't have any want for information. But if you need more information, our planning director will be administering our program, and so you're free to ask for information from him. I will tell you, the city of Eagle has approved them, and they're collecting them as of January 1st. We're expecting our first kind of payments from them for early February. Star is right there on their heels. They may actually be collecting right now. You all are kind of next in the process. And then we have the city of Boise, got a special meeting with the county commissioners and the city council are going to talk just this. This is the only thing on the agenda on February 3rd, so next week, which is really good progress. Meridian has approved the CIPs and they're paused until they want to be last. So we're racing to get everybody else done, and then they said they'll pick the process up and move. CUNA has been through planning and zoning to approve the CIPs, and they're on next week, the CIPs in front of city council. So they're kind of following along behind you all. So we're very pleased with the progress, and we just hope to get this thing across the finish line, and then we can build these funds and start building capital projects, like EMS stations, and kind of finish out that corners facility as our population grows. So happy to answer any questions. Again, appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Rutherford. One question, just to clarify, my understanding is kind of all or nothing with the cities in Ada County. Is that correct? We all 6 cities have to prove it for it to be fully implemented, which obviously makes it hard on you because you're waiting on Meridian to be last, and I don't even know if you've had discussions with Boise yet. So it's been a process for you. Is that a correct assessment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. We really, for the capital improvement plan countywide to work like it's supposed to, it really has to be everybody's in or nobody's in. And we all had hoped downtown to be able to kind of work through the process together, finish together, big Avon finish, and it didn't happen. So we just decided to get started. In fact, Meridian said, you guys take the first step, we'll follow. And so the commissioners said, let's go. We've had some pretty good traction in other cities. We do have, again, a meeting at Boise next week, and I think that's a good sign. Both Meridian and Boise have not elected to go forward. Well, Boise hasn't agreed to go forward, but I think that's a good sign that we're meeting with them next week. Meridian has paused the corner. They don't like the idea of the coroner. They want to see the word coroner in the statute. Our lobbyists are working on that right now. I don't think it's a heavy lift, but we anticipate that'll be done this session, and then they'll pick those up. But if we get to the end of this race and a city or two decides they're not going to do it, I think it'll be up to the board whether or not to come around to the cities and say, we're going to shutter this thing.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions for Mr. Rutherford?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Councilor Street.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Rutherford. I have a question on the city of Eagle. If you are allowed to tell us this, and it sounds like maybe Star's just on their heel, what happens in the event of funds being collected if the resolution is never approved? Then what are these cities doing with this money that's been collected?
Mr. Mayor, Council President Page. So they are remitting it on a monthly basis. That's kind of our, which is kind of covered in that intergovernmental agreement that we'll get to hopefully here. They will send that downtown, and we're required by statute to put it in a lockbox specifically for EMS or coroner. It isn't jurisdiction specific, but it's kind of subject specific. And once we lawfully collect those, we're authorized to spend those on capital improvements. And so my sense is that we would spend those on capital improvements. We'd buy ambulances or, some other durable good vehicles or improving buildings that we have or building one. So my sense is that if the city collects money and for some reason their program shutters and it doesn't get to us, they collect all of the information about the developer and how much they paid. So it goes back to those people.
That's
Which is, yes, sir. With the same idea that if we don't spend it within that 8 years and don't have a good reason for an extension, the county's obligated to mail that back to provide it back to the developers.
Yeah, just thank you for resolving that in my mind. I was fearing, parity issues if something like that were to happen, and other jurisdictions saying, hey, we've paid, partially for this thing that's enriched the whole county unjustly on the backs of our city. So, or our constituents, so thank you. That helps me understand what our safety valve is here. If that was my concern.
Great question. Any further questions?
Mr. Mayor. So I thought that you said maybe that you were collecting money and the money could be used once it was collected, but then you went on to clarify that it could be refunded. So I think I just wanted to be absolutely clear. Are the funds that you're currently collecting from Eagle, are they just sitting there until all the other agreements are reached?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Carver Herbert. So they will sit there. I think that's probably a better question for the commissioners. The commissioners, if it's lawfully approved, like Eagles, followed all the process, and that money is sitting in that account downtown, and those typically sit for years to accumulate to be able to do anything of any capital significance. The board is kind of authorized by law to spend those money for that pursuit, right? They could buy an ambulance or build an EMS station, or spend the money to do the renovation on the jail. But they have, at least to me, been steadfast that this is an all or nothing proposition. And so they would also, if they're true to that, they could just repay them. But it would be lawful for them to spend that for capital improvements.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Mr. Waters?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I put together a little legal memo that's on page 190 of your packet. It basically just explains or summarizes everything that Mr. Rutherford just told you. This could be legal if it's done properly, and so far it's been done properly. It does require a public hearing, so it has been legally noticed for the public hearing tonight if anybody in the public would like to testify about it. The actual ordinance starts on page 194 of your packet, and just a couple of thoughts on that. First thing, I just want to make sure that council's aware of how much these proposed fees actually are. So if you go to page 201 in your council packet, that's the breakdown of what these fees would be. And so I could read them into the record, or you can just see them yourself, but I think it's important that everybody at least sees what kind of money we're talking about. These fees will be only for new construction. So these are fees on new construction whenever this gets passed, if it does get passed at all. It's an ordinance, so Idaho code requires 3 readings, and you could cut this pie up several different ways. You could have a public hearing tonight and then continue the first reading to a later date. You could have a public hearing tonight and have a first reading tonight and then continue for a second reading. You could table the whole thing to wait for Boise and Meridian to catch up. Again, this is another one of those issues that the council has a lot of latitude and a lot of discretion on what to do tonight. I would, if nothing else, I would recommend the public hearing because that was noticed up for tonight and it costs money to put these things in the paper. So if for no other reason, just to be good stewards of the taxpayer money, I would recommend getting the public hearing done tonight, and then whatever the council would like to do. I told Mr. Rutherford, I think on Friday, but I do not think we should have a third reading until we are confident that everybody else is on board. And I mean specifically Boise and Meridian, but that is something that you can deal with at a future date.
Yeah,
So
thank you, Mr.
I stand for
Wadums.
questions.
And that's the discussion that I had for Mr. Wadums is we're gonna do the public hearing, we're gonna do a first reading, and then we're gonna kind of pause until we hear what the other cities do. I don't want to create work for the staff that might be unnecessary. We have the interagency agreements that we have to work on and things like that. So I think Mr. Wadums and Mr. Rutherford will work on those, but we'll do our second, third readings once we hear more from Meridian and once we hear more from, more importantly, Boise. All right, and so we're gonna do the hearing, first reading, and then kind of put it on the shelf. And Mr. Rutherford, Mr. Wadums can work at your pace to come up with the interagency agreement that works for everybody. So did I verbalize that correctly?
Mr. Mayor, you did great. Yes,
Okay.
yes, sir. That, on the intergovernmental agreement, when we talked about it Friday, it's going to be similar to the Ada County Highway District impact fees and dissimilar to the NACFR fees. NACFR fees, we are doing a little more work, and what Mr. Rutherford proposed Friday regarding the intergovernmental fees would be people are going to go to the county, they're going to pay the fees, and then they're just going to show staff, Garden City staff, the receipt, and then they can get.
We like that. Thank you.
So
appreciate you making that.
Yes,
offer.
they have been really good to work with to try to minimize the load on our staff.
Well, good luck with Boise. You know.
Mr. Mayor, I was just looking at this fee agreement and it sparked another question for me, if you would indulge me, Mr. Rutherford. I'm looking at the fee breakdown and let's see, and this is on page 201 of the council packet. And I understand impact fees. My question is about this sort of the fees, the levies here on non-residential. So we have retail, office, industrial, and institutional. Is this for new buildings only or any changed use? So a new business comes into an existing building.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Page, it's new builds.
New builds only. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, with that, let's move to open the public hearing. I don't know if we have anybody that signed up. Anybody online who would like to address or testify, I guess? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and make a motion to do the first reading by title.
Mr. Mayor, just can we get confirmation from people in the room, even if they didn't sign up? Did anyone come here and wish to testify and just not sign up? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Give me a motion.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I move for a first reading on, have you closed the public hearing?
I did.
Okay, thank you. I move for a reading of the first reading of ordinance 1065-25.
By title only.
By title only, thank you. What a mess.
And I would second that.
Okay.
Mr.
Clerk,
Mayor, and
yes.
Mr.
Any
Wadums,
open
a point of
discussion?
order.
Yes.
I, as a private citizen, attended the neighborhood meeting for this when it came before the city. It was informational only, and I do believe that it will in no way impact my ability to make a decision regarding this in a biased manner.
Okay, thank you for disclosing this. Appreciate that. Any further discussion? Clerk, call roll, please.
Councilmember Carver Herbert,
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen.
Yes.
First reading ordinance 1065-25, an ordinance of the City of Garden City, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, amending Title 11 of the Garden City Code by the addition of a new Chapter 2 entitled Ada County Development Impact Fees, providing for a short title, authority, applicability, and purpose definitions, the establishment of county service area, the imposition of impact fees, fee schedule and exemptions, the method of collection of impact fees and enforcement thereof, a process for impact fee certification, a process for individual assessment, developer credits and reimbursements, the methodology for calculating impact fees, the establishment of a process for extraordinary impacts, a process for fee payer refunds, the establishment of impact fee accounts and annual audits and reporting requirements, the expenditure of impact fees, a process for appeals, protests, and mediation, and miscellaneous provisions of providing a summary of the ordinance and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Mr. Other, thank you for your time coming this evening. Okay, moving on to G2, Resolution 123426. Mr. Watts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is for a resolution for our public hearing process. And so I have a memo on this one that starts on page 461 of your packet. And there's a couple things in that memo I'd like to just touch on real quick. And then there's the actual resolution. So a couple things. And I put some things in my memorandum to help everybody out, in particular, a new council member who has never sat on a board like this before. So on page 464 of my memo, I mentioned Robert's Rules of Order. And so it talks about, and this policy and this resolution basically says that the city does not strictly follow Robert's Rules of Order, but generally it's a general guideline, and the city does follow parliamentary procedure. And so that's in the memo, and it kind of explains some tips. Like on page 464, it talks about how business gets done under Robert's rules. And then 465, it talks about hints on Robert's Rules of Order. And I put that in just primarily for our new council members, so she could get accustomed and familiar with parliamentary procedures. I know she probably dealt with that down in the legislature a little bit, but similar ideas here. And then the actual resolution is in there. And what it is there's two things. We have several different requirements in our code for a public hearing. The obvious one is for land use, quasi-judicial land use decisions. They are required under LUPA to have a public hearing. And that LUPA also requires that we have a specific either ordinance or resolution that says what our procedures are. We have had that ordinance or resolution since 2018. It's actually resolution 1053-18, and that's worked since 2018. But then staff came forward recently and thought it'd be a good idea to update the 1053-18. And it's probably good to take a look at it because it has been such since 2018. So the bulk of this is your public hearing process for land use. The last two pages, though, are regarding a new process we have in our Garden City Code, and that is called alcohol points. If you recall, within like the last year, you passed a code amendment that talks about this alcohol point system, where if there's an establishment, a bar, a tavern, and they are over serving or they have criminal activity or something, that the city could go after them and accumulate points. And at some point, at a certain points, the city would suspend their liquor license or revoke their liquor license and so on and so forth. What this resolution is for their due process. Before the city could just take their liquor license, they have due process. They have a right to a hearing. And so what this resolution does is try to include all of our public hearing processes under one roof, just under one resolution. So somebody just doesn't have to look at multiple resolutions. They can just look at one, and then they can look at the land use, or they can look at the alcohol points, and it should all be in there. I don't know if Ms. Thornborough wants to provide any summary. The bulk of this policy came from Ms. Thornborough. And so I don't know if you have any specific questions for her about this in terms of why does somebody get 15 minutes to testify? Why is it limited to 3 minutes? There have been some changes, and I would say some improvements to the 2018 version. And so that's basically it. It's to clean it up, it's to update it, it's to clarify. I mean, I don't think the city has ever really clarified through the city council that we do use parliamentary procedure. So I think it's good to probably get that on the books, so everybody knows, yes, we're following parliamentary procedure around here. And so I think it's a good cleanup. I think it encapsulates everything that staff was trying to do. I think if you have any specific questions, please ask Ms. Thornborough, since she drafted most of it. And with that, I recommend approval of the resolution, and I stand for questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Waters, Ms. Thornborough?
Mr. Mayor. So as you all know, I am a new council member, and my path to this position has come through extensive involvement in the public process as a private citizen. And because of that, I've reviewed this ordinance, and I do have several substantive questions and suggestions. First, I want to sincerely thank staff for the work that's been done. I actually am in strong agreement with the direction that this is headed. But my questions and feedback are really intended to be constructive and collaborative, and I simply believe that my experience on the other side of this process may add value as we consider this. So it also is very possible that some of my questions and concerns I have maybe resolved very quickly once I have a clearer understanding of a few of the processes. But this matter is important enough that I believe it deserves time and attention to get it right. So with respect, I ask council for the grace of additional time, and I'm prepared to make a motion to continue until the next council meeting if the timing is appropriate to do so right now.
Does Mr. Wadhams have your specific questions?
No, because these obviously came up as I was reviewing the packet over the weekend and through the half a day. And I did attempt to make contact with Mr. Wadhams today, but we just weren't able to connect. I think I have questions for him. I have questions for Ms. Thornborough. I think if you were to take a look through my document, you would see there are many pages that I think would take the council's time tonight. We can certainly walk through that if you would like, but I think we can, as I said, I'm prepared to request that we just continue this and be able to go through some of the questions. I think there actually are some actually maybe questions about whether we should put in additional information in here so they're more technical. I don't even know if
Mr. Mayor.
is the right way.
Council President Page?
Can
Council.
may I suggest, and if the other council members will indulge, could you maybe give us an overview in a 5-minute period? Of course, not to solve this, but then we can determine the scope of what is needed for the date certain, you know, whether that's a work session or council involvement. Is that okay? Do we have
Absolutely.
appetite for that? Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I think in terms of being new to the process, it's not clear to me. I think my initial thought was maybe a work session was necessary, but I think really being able to have the opportunity to sit down and actually talk with staff first is maybe the questions are not maybe as significant as they may seem. But for example, if we take a look at
Miss Carver Herbert, fellow councilwoman. May I interrupt real quickly for my benefit? Have you had an orientation with Mr. Wadhams?
Yes, to a certain extent, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so for example, let's see. Okay, so questions, it's a mix of some questions as well as perhaps some suggestions, but for example, we're saying post the mailing of notices, and this deals with design review applications as well as I believe probably other mailing of notices that might be required in different portions of this. I'm looking at page 479. Certainly have recently heard that the U.S. Post Office is no longer supporting timely delivery and have said such things as the IRS, that you shouldn't count on the fact of using of a specific date to postmark your items. So I have questions about whether this would impact this. A question of what if no one shows up? The neighborhood meeting must last at least 30 minutes. What if no one shows up? Are they required to stay there, the applicant, for the full 30 minutes, or are they, or do they wait 15 and go? Let's see. I think there are differences between, I think, the public's understanding of a design review application and an application that might require a public hearing. I did not see that as I was reviewing pages 479 through 480, the explanation of at what point might a public hearing be required or requested with regard to a design review application. Because I think it does create some confusion about, in order to be with a design review, you have this position of that in order to be a party of interest, you have to respond within 15 days of the design review of the neighborhood meeting. And so again, there's a difference in how this plays out if it eventually turns into a public hearing, and there are different processes for when it goes into the public hearing. So, and again, some of the questions that I had were somewhat answered as I went later into when you got into the public comment, but I think that it says that written testimony is requisite for establishing standing to appeal the decision. So my question is, that's where I come into the question of this, well, when does hearing come in? Because we do establish standing, I believe, when you do testify during a public hearing. And so I just felt that there were things within this that could potentially be maybe clarified a little bit more, particularly as it related to the difference between the design review and the other types of applications. Certainly, I think I'm just wondering, for the public's benefit, the discussion a little bit about the differences between de novo and non-de novo in terms of what they may mean and how they would apply in these different circumstances. The question would be about the neighborhood meeting. So if a neighborhood meeting and in an initial design review, the applicant is requested to do a design review, as part of the design review application, they're asked to do a neighborhood meeting. But if the application is in turn going to go to a public hearing, then do they have to do a second neighborhood meeting? And perhaps maybe some of this is my knowledge and my newness to this, but it seems that there might be some benefit in clarifying a little bit, particularly about this whole piece where design review is and where it goes, when it should go to council for a public hearing. So most of my comments really reflected around those issues in particular. I thought that there could be some things that could maybe even doing some sort of a chart that could kind of outline this a little bit about the differences and of the different types of applications and the different types of requirements as they might apply. I believe that something like this might be similar in existing code. My question also relates to how do these policies and procedures differ from what is in existing code? Do they sync up? Are there any differences between those? Also, I know basically in testifying, there's been a request to provide written testimony for public hearings within, I believe, 7 days prior to the public hearing. But I didn't see that in this information. So there's the question that if you do it after the 7 days, then it becomes considered to be late. What does that mean? If it's late, is it the explanation of is that at the discretion of the council to allow that to come in or not? So again, a question as it relates to the differences between a remand and an appeal, and what those differences are and how they may apply to the different applications. I think there could be some clarity where that's concerned.
Almost like a definition of terms is what I'm hearing a lot.
Maybe.
I'm interpreting that correct.
And for example, it does talk about under the on page 497, talks about the reason for a remand. If new material is provided, the matter may be remanded. My question is by who would be providing that material? Especially my confusion comes, I think, as it relates to de novo versus non-de novo. And so it's my understanding that no additional information can really be added into the record after a decision has been made. So I'm not quite sure how that applies in this particular case. And then I'm just not as familiar with the alcohol policies. I didn't really have a lot of substantive questions about that, but I just had felt that there were enough questions that came up that I felt that there might be some benefit in just continuing this. And I would propose, if that would meet to the council's approval, we could postpone it to potentially 2 weeks, or if it's believed based on this overview of the types of questions I'm asking, if we need more time based on the bandwidth of staff.
Mr. Waters, Ms. Thornburg?
And Mayor, if I may clarify on some of the points that Councilmember Carver Herbert had brought up. I think that it might clarify a lot of the questions that she has and maybe hopefully address them without having to do a lot of work. If we go back about 2 years ago, there was an ordinance that got to a second reading. I'll call it the admin ordinance, and it's sitting at second reading right now. And it was pulled off to wait for the interfaith decision because that would affect how we draft that admin section of code. And there's been a lot of discussion in conjunction with that ordinance about creating kind of a manual that can be adopted and satisfy LUPA that just says as adopted, enforceable by adopted resolution by council. And so they're really intended to work in tandem. And so some of the questions are really embedded in code. For example, when is a design review triggered into a public hearing? That ordinance that's sitting out there at second reading says it provides what the decisions are and what triggers them. And so it's defined within that code context. And so there are some of those definitions and also cleaning up and adding that stuff into this resolution. So you'll see that this is a lot more robust than code, really specifying, you know, some of the details that we see applicants often miss. Say they always want us to review their sign posting for their property. And so we're trying to get some of that in there to be a more user-friendly document. And then some of the stuff that you might really want if you're going to court on a matter in code to remain in code. But I just took quick notes. The post office, that is a LUPA requirement right now. The state's quite far behind, I would say, on some of the noticing requirements. For example, they don't have social media. And so we drive around town posting up notices sometimes that, in my opinion, people aren't looking at legal ads or these postings, but if we can blast it out on Facebook, then we might reach more people. But we still have these requirements that we need to comply with under LUPA. And that what is in there is LUPA's requirements. You certainly could change those if you wanted to as a council. The intent of saying 30 minutes is, yes, that people need to hang out for 30 minutes in case people are late at neighborhood meetings. The design review is in that code that's waiting to be adopted to trigger when public hearings are required. We have required them to go back and renotice everything as a public hearing. So they've noticed as a design review, and then when it's triggered to be a public hearing, they go back and they notice for public hearing. The one exception is the neighborhood meeting already occurred. So that would be duplicative in nature. And the code that I'm referencing is in 8.6. And do the late public testimony, that is a drain on staff. And so what's happening right at the end when we're trying to get your packets out so you can read the 1,000 pages, we're trying to synthesize, put it in the decision document, put it into the staff report and get all of that ready for you often after your packets are due. When they come in. And so staff is suggesting that actually be increased to 9 days. And also the council or decision-making body can always, if they've had time to consider it part of a record, add that to the record when they receive it at a late date. But certainly, staff is happy to have a work session, either one-on-one or with the whole council to get this right.
Mr. Wadums, any comment?
I heard one legal question, Mayor, Council Member. I did, WCH, I'll talk to you about later if you like that or hate that, but Council Member Carver Herbert. You asked a legal question. If there's a conflict between ordinance and resolution, the ordinance would trump. The ordinance is the law of Garden City. So if there's a variance or a conflict, ordinance would trump. Just like with comp plans, if there's a variance between ordinance and comp plan, then the ordinance trumps because that's the law. So I hope that answers your legal question.
It does.
And I think if the council wants to continue it to make sure we get it right, I have no legal issue with that at all.
Pleasure of council.
Mr. Mayor,
Council President.
I just want to open this up a little bit for discussion on this. I don't want to phrase this as a motion. So are we okay to just discuss this at will here, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, it's so we're having open discussion.
Okay, here's my comment. When I knock doors, one of the criticisms I get is this idea that, you know, the first time somebody notices something going on that they would have had an opportunity to provide input into because they have standing, it's in their neighborhood, they were in the area of impact, was when they see, you know, earth movers out kind of moving dirt around, right? And to our director's point, I don't read legal notices. I have to post them sometimes in my job as an attorney, but you know, I don't even subscribe to the newspaper. And I think most people don't. How many of us have ridden right past these signs that we see everywhere, right? And so I understand the frustration that a member of the community will feel, and they'll tell me this when we knock on the door, and as politely as possible, I say, well, you know, we have a process that's due, and this met our due process, right? And required by statute, actually, right? More than just our due process. To the late comments, you know, there's always the opportunity to testify in person, which carries the same weight in my mind as a letter that I would read. Some people do both, and that's their prerogative, I guess. But I agree that we need hard, fast deadlines, or business just doesn't get done, right? Hard, fast deadlines are important because we're trying to digest this as council members and as staff. You know, I need to be able to review this record in a timely manner for a Monday meeting. And so I think deadlines need to be strict and adhered to. I always, oftentimes, you know, it's very common. We've all seen it happen, and then, you know, voted to allow something into the record late. And, you know, at some point that practice just really needs to stop, and the message needs to get out. You know, there's opportunity. You had opportunity, right? And the cure for that is you're here at the meeting, testify. We'd love to hear what you have to say. I know I would. But to the points that you are making, Councilmember Carver Herbert, I fully agree that one of the legitimate complaints that I hear from people that live in the city is that they don't understand our processes for weighing in on things being built in the neighborhood. And it's always that, right? They don't care about our resolutions, right? They care about, most people care about what's going to come into their neighborhood. And so we need to do that better. And if we're working on that now, I would prefer we get it right the first time. And which brings me to a question for our director is, are we taking this out of order with the the motion that was, and now we have the opinion, we have the judicial opinion that we were waiting for. Is it time to consider the third reading, and should that come before this?
Mayor, Council President Page, I think that that is a great suggestion. This came about quickly, and I had requested that it slowed down. It was intended to be, I don't remember which meeting, was the last meeting we had 2 meetings ago, I believe, and I wanted to look at it in conjunction with what we had in that admin code. I do think it's important to make sure that they're reviewed together. Staff did take the time to look at that code and make some changes, but certainly we could get that hopefully bolstered back up and through the process.
And then, if I may ask another question, is that independent? So now we're talking about the third reading. We're talking about this having, this ordinance having its process, or this resolution. Where does this primer lie in that? I understand that there was an idea, oh, well, let's create a manual, right? That spells it out, that makes development easier in Garden City, right? We already know it's very expensive to develop in Garden City because it's all infill, right? But criticism, we've heard it, that it's difficult to work with us in our development, and there's probably some merit to that. And so I think this primer is a great example if people will read it. And take the time to read it. But again, that's more load to staff, right? I can't imagine what it takes to create something like that, because you're talking about describing complex Latin terms. What does de novo mean? What constitutes de novo? What's a remand? How's a remand different than a denial? What's the appeal process like, right? That could be very, very lengthy, that document.
Mayor, Council President Page, internally within Development Services, we had discussions that the document is, we believe, necessary and a great step forward for the department. However, with that being said, we still will have outreach documents that will be necessary for applicants and public alike, because we doubt that people will actually review a manual of that size. And so they want very quick answers digested quickly for them. And so it was our opinion to get this as good as possible that we can copy and paste from basically for other outreach documents. But yes, absolutely, people tend to want very quick and very accurate and very thorough, but bullet pointed into 3 bullet answers.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman?
Director Thornborough, President of the Council. We're kind of getting into discussion about how to educate the public, correct? And I'm wondering if it would be worthwhile to do some research. That I have to believe that Idaho Association of Cities or other national city resources have links to videos that we could potentially put on our website. That what does de novo mean? Here's a link. You listen to some lovely little lady explain what that means. Or, what is a typical process of application? Because there's no way I anticipate any applicant coming in and digging through a manual of how to engage with the city. However, I believe if you can find an audio-visual solution, it would be more widely adapted and potentially more helpful. But moving on to the discussion regarding this specific resolution, your question is noted, and did I hear an answer? Should this resolution be moved to a date certain to address the original ordinance that is waiting for the third reading. Did you say that it should be or should not be?
Mayor, Councilmember Jorgensen, the cleanest thing to do probably is to put them through together. That ordinance needs to go to a work session with the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then Mr. Wadhams can correct me if I'm incorrect. If they don't feel that there is significant change, I think they can just ask you to have the hearing. Otherwise, they might need to have a hearing. So that might take a minute for it to get through that process. Just in and of itself to have a hearing, that takes weeks, a couple of months by the time you do the neighborhood meeting and you go through and you do the noticing and do the 2 different public hearings. If we're required to do a public hearing on the third reading. So there are some questions about how quickly we could go through that process. One of the thoughts was getting this done and on the books, you can change a resolution fairly quickly. It really amounts to making those changes and bringing it back through the council. So that can be done in a 2-week time frame versus a 2 to 3 month time frame, depending on the hearing noticing that you have to go through. So at the end of the day, the cleanest would be to make sure that there aren't major changes that the planning and zoning or this body would make with that ordinance as it comes back through. I believe from what I've heard, I think they're very minor, my opinion, very minor changes to make that document, that ordinance meet what it needs to for the interfaith. Just really making sure, saying, do you get free review or not? And what's de novo and what's not, etc. But I think that that's all pretty clear in there. And again, that is my opinion, and it hasn't gone through the boards. So there are 2 ways of doing it. Adopt tonight, so something's on the books for the PD for their hearing to amend what we have on the books right now, or bring them together. I think you could do either way.
Director Thornborough, thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, President of the Council and fellow council members, there is a component of this resolution that I would like to understand a potential urgency, and that is the alcohol hearing. That is something that we do need to address. I don't know if there is anything imminent, but if so, would it make sense to break that component out and let the rest come through with the prior ordinance? Or what would the record? I don't want to see if the rest of this process is going to be a month or 90 days or whatever that is. I don't want to see that portion held up in being adopted for the city.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. Just briefly on this ordinance that Ms. Thornborough brought up. The delay on that is on me. And so as I recall where that is it was remanded to planning and zoning. And then I made a presentation to planning and zoning, and I said, I do have some changes in light of the interfaith case. And then Chair Montoya basically said in the public meeting, he said, just come back at us with your recommended changes so we can consider those. And that's where it stopped. So I need to pick that back up. I can put that as a top priority if that's the instruction that you give me. In terms of whether they need to be together or not, I don't think it really matters. Ms. Thornborough is absolutely correct that if we need to amend the resolution, it's easy to do. You don't have to repeal a previous resolution. You just create a new resolution. And that's just an administrative thing. And there's not a requirement for 3 readings or anything like that. So you could do, this is another one of those things, you could do it any which way you want. If the question is how long before the ordinance is ready, I think it's probably 6 months out still, because it's going to have to go to planning and zoning and then it comes back up to you. So if you're waiting to do them together, I think that's probably 6 months out, so if that helps you.
That does. Thank you very much. And again, I would simply reiterate, I don't think that the city should wait 6 months to get a resolution and documented information on how an alcohol hearing would be conducted. That would be my only concern and reservation.
So Councilman, is your recommendation to go ahead and pass the resolution as it is written, and then we will go back and tweak it, so to speak, and come back at a later date and update it accordingly? It's just one, because we can then get that alcohol piece on the books.
Mr. Mayor, I think that we may need further conversation, because I certainly don't want Councilmember Carter Herbert to feel like she's going to agree to a resolution that she's not comfortable with. And so my proposal would be potentially, if there's a section that needs to be continued, if we could potentially separate the alcohol hearing, go ahead and move it under a resolution.
So
And allow,
split them is
yeah.
what you're.
Mr. Mayor, I would agree that really my biggest concern revolves around really more the land use questions. I would be open to the idea of trying to split out the alcohol from the land use. Although I would say, in fairness, I really like to at least give it a little bit just more attention. But so the question is, can this be treated separately? So basically, we just create the policy document just to deal with the alcohol reviews, and then we would agree that we would deal with the other portion of this document at a later date. Can we do that actually in this meeting, or do we need to? Does it need to be split out and then considered?
That, and I guess the question I would have, understanding the workload staff, is, are we creating a lot of work? And so if it's a lot of work, I mean, it may sound easy to split it, but I want to understand from staff how much actually work this is going to take from Mr. Wadhams and Mrs. Thornborough to do all this stuff. My thought process is always try to take the path of simplest resistance, to do what's fastest and easiest. And so Mr. Wadhams, to combine them might take 6 months, but is there something that we can maybe tweak a few of these things and get it in on the next meeting and it's good enough? And then we pass that and we get it on the books, and then we worry, and then we do it again later. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to create a lot of work that's unnecessary and not value add. So I want to make sure we think about that. So I'd like staff's opinion on workload, value add, path of least resistance that makes sense.
Mayor, there are a couple of questions that I would like to address there. I think the intent was to consolidate and have the hearing procedures in one location. And so separating them out, I think, could be doable. But it certainly would take a level of work. And then it's set up as one document. And so to separate it, you'd have to go undo that. And then if at a later date they come back into one document, you'd have to redo it again. Another thing I would like to point out, that ordinance hopefully is coming your way in the next half a year at most. And certainly if this is adopted in some form, maybe after a work session to refine what needs to be refined with that ordinance as something that you can look at to compare and contrast. And then as that ordinance comes through, we could bring it together with that document and make any tweaks in a new resolution. I would suggest that's far less work than separating and putting them back together, if you would like to go that route. And Mr. Wadhams probably has opinions on that as well.
Well, Mayor, council members, Ms. Thornborough, not really. I think you can do it any which way you want. I will just, the only other thing I could think of to say is this resolution and the one that's coming up after, those were part of what I'll call the John Evans push, which is he had certain things that he wanted done before the end of the year. And so my marching orders were to try to get this done as soon as possible and try to get the next one that's on your agenda done as soon as possible. We have a new sheriff in town or a new mayor in town, and so I take direction from this one here on
Okay.
whether we want to expedite or slow it down.
So that's a question for me.
Mr. Mayor, before you weigh in, I do want to underscore and call out the fact that something that's weighing on my mind and that I believe will change some of the urgency is the soccer. And there will be concerts and very large crowds that will be using the different businesses within Garden City. And my concern is that we may see an acceleration of concerns and potentially have a hearing regarding an alcohol issue within that 6-month window. And that's what's driving my concern and my question about potentially getting something on the books sooner rather than later.
That's a great point. Thank you for that. I hadn't thought of that. So here's my perspective. Again, I tend to think in practicality. So I agree with Councilmember Jorgensen that we probably need to get something on the books. We get this alcohol ordinance put away for the reasons that she just explained. For me, Councilmember Carver Herbert made some very good points. I don't know if they are such an issue that someone's gonna, who reading it is gonna notice them and make a big deal. I think it's a really big deal at this point, but they are important. And so I don't, but a lot of it is like clarification of remand or terms and things like that, well, I think we do need to have those definition of terms. I don't know if that's such an urgent thing that we get done, that it's really gonna stop everything in its tracks because people are gonna be so confused, about this new resolution that we put in. My feeling is that the number of people that are going to read it as thoroughly as you is not very many. And so I think my preference, was let's get this thing passed. Let's get this on the books. Let's make sure we get your notes and get them in there and start working to get them tweaked and in there. And we get, you had some great suggestions. We do need definitions, do these type of things. And then we combine them either with at a later resolution and we can get the bulk of them done and just in a few more meetings, or if we want to combine them with the other resolution in 6 months, we get it done then. I think what we have now is a pretty solid resolution. We can add those, if there's some that you think are major, let's get them in sooner rather than later. If there's things that's like, those are all great points, let's make sure we do it right and combine it when we do it in 6 months. I think that would be my recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, what I think would be satisfying too, if we could at least continue this just for 2 weeks until the next council meeting. It would give me time to be able to sit down with Ms. Thornborough and potentially Mr. Wadhams to at least go through the actual questions I have and whether they can be addressed very simply or whether it may take more time. But it's not my intent to try to slow this down in any way, shape, or form. But I also, I can tell you as the person, it may not seem important, but yes, I do follow these matters much closer than the average person, but I also tended to be the person people would turn to when they had questions. And that's why I know that having the process laid out in a very easy to understand format is important. And also the difference between what is in a manual versus what is in code. And I myself have gone to try to look at, I've seen some of the wonderful documents that have been put together that really do provide a simple step-by-step process. I believe even some of that information has been set out for people who have requested to be a party of interest, that it describes the process and the hearing process. And that is very, very helpful that they get it at a just-in-time manner. But that's really the overall goal of what I am just attempting to try to do, is that we have some of this, that the overall goal is important. And I think that we're moving in a great direction. I support it. And perhaps maybe it is just something as simple as some tweaks. And if there are some bigger things that come up out of the conversation I have with then staff, then we can take that elephant and try to deal with it
later.
Yes, at a later date.
That's a good idea. I think that's a fair point. Council President Page.
Is that a motion? Please make your motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that resolution 1234-26 be continued to the February 11th, 2026 City Council meeting providing time to review and incorporate constructive feedback to the Garden City public meeting and hearing guidelines policy.
Mr. Mayor, it would actually be February 9th.
February 9th. Oh, yep. Sorry about that.
February 9th.
And I have a second. Mr.
Second, okay, any discussion on this matter? Okay. Clerk call roll, please.
Councilmember Jorgensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Page,
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert.
Yes.
Thank you, and then I will trust, Councilman, that you will arrange the meetings with staff to answer your questions. And then, I guess, probably sooner rather than later, because 2 weeks is, all right, is that 2 weeks away or 3 weeks away? The next 2 weeks, okay, there we go. All right, and we'll get that done. Thank you, that was good, healthy discussion, appreciate that. Moving on to G3, resolution 1235-26, talking about government in our council chamber and things like that. Mr. Watts?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I have a legal memorandum. It's on page 501 of your packet. There is a proposed resolution on page 505 of your packet. And then the attachment to the resolution starts on page 507. So what is this one all about? Like I just said a minute ago, this was part of my previous marching orders were to try to get some of these things wrapped up before the last mayor was done. And I was a little bit tardy in getting this in front of you. But as I started to look into this, it became apparent that we have never had a policy for this building. I've been around since this place was built. There's no written policy on who gets to use it, when they get to use it, what the priorities are when there's a conflict, whether this room right here is a public forum, a limited public forum, or just a government forum. And I think it's important, once I realized that we should have something on the books, because there is all kinds of litigation nationwide where a particular religion, and I'm not going to mention the religion because I don't want them to sue me, but there's a particular religion that goes around with cities and asks for use of their conference rooms, and when the city says no, they sue them and then they say you're treating us different than every other religion, or you're just treating us negatively because you don't believe in what we believe in, or something like that. So the case law I think it's pretty clear that the council can decide whether this room right here, the conference room upstairs, there's 2 conference rooms upstairs, and the library room over here, whether you want public to meet in those buildings, whether that's a limited public forum or whether you just want that to be for employees only. So it's kind of like a big picture question. And so what this resolution says is it assumes and it recommends, I guess the legal recommendation is that you call this room right here a limited public forum, which means you can regulate it as long as it's content neutral. You cannot treat different organizations different just based on the content of the speech. So everything would have to be content neutral. But then the discussions with staff and the previous mayor were that there should also need to be a nexus with the city. So not everybody can come in here and use this room. Somebody that doesn't have any ties to the city can't just come in and then bring their people into this room. So on page 507, what staff kind of came up with the help of Mayor John Evans, is that only certain organizations would have access to make reservations for any of these rooms. And that is local government agencies could use these rooms, committees, commissions, task force created can use them. Annual meetings of the HOAs, the Garden City HOAs, that was something I can say that Mayor John Evans was pretty adamant about, that he thought the HOAs in the city, they're all taxpayers, are paying Garden City taxes. The HOA should be able to use this room if they need to be able to use this room. But again, that's a policy question for the council. That's above my pay grade. But then it says right here, nonprofits can use it, neighborhoods can use it, and professional organizations can use it. But then beyond that, and that's okay, because you're regulating time, place, and manner speech. And as long as you're not granting or denying based on the content of the subject matter, then this should be defensible in court. But I think it is important to say what our policy is. Every once in a while, somebody asks, what's the policy? Can I reserve council chambers? And the answer is like, well, maybe. I mean, Lisa's done a great job of coming up with a policy without having saying from the council. We've just been kind of winging it. But I think there has been adopted policies for $50 for the room, I think. And so that says this here, and I'm sure Lisa could correct me. This thing says here, you can, people that if they have that nexus with the city, they can only reserve Tuesdays through Thursdays between 9:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. Why is that? Because the libraries are open till 8, Tuesday through Thursday, and we don't want people in this building when there are no employees around. That would be a problem. So that's basically the genesis. The rest of it is what would you like it to look like? What's missing in this policy is the library. The library has their own policy for their library programs, and there's been some internal discussion about whether library programs need a nexus with the city or whether they don't need a nexus with the city. Miss Pettyjohn's not here, but I think she would, the library wants to retain discretion for the library programs. There's, for example, the sound bath. The sound bath has absolutely zero nexus with the city, other than that it's super cool and people like it. But sound bath doesn't have a nexus to the city. So this does not include the library programs. The library wants to retain their own control over the library programs, but then that becomes the question, like, this council chambers, is this the city's council chambers or is this the library's council chambers? Because they answer to different bosses, and so really these are some policy questions about what access do you want the public to have in this facility here? And so it's set up the way it's recommended to set up. You could obviously decide any which way you want. We do have a flagpole policy, and in my memorandum, I talk about the U.S. Supreme Court case where was it? It's Boston. The city of Boston got sued over their flagpole because they did not have a flagpole policy. Somebody asked to hang their flag. They said no, because basically they didn't like the flag, but they had no policy. They got sued and they lost in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. U.S. Supreme Court said you have to follow, you need a policy, you have to follow your policy. And if you declare it a limited public forum, that applies to every member of the public. You don't get to pick and choose. So that's kind of the genesis of this recommendation here. It was something that Mayor Evans was trying to get done during his tenure, and the delay is attributable to me and my workload. And so I apologize for that. But that's what it is, and I stand for questions. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Wadhams?
Mr. Wadhams, I'm not sure, I might have blown through this too fast, but I want to understand if there is a guidance on hierarchy or priorities. My opinion is this chamber is the chamber to do the business of the people, and any business of the people would take precedence and priority over any other reservation or inclination or interest. So therefore, can you point me, is there something that stipulates that in the event, and I believe that this should also be part of the reservation, is a disclosure or statement that stipulates that if there is a need for the people's business to be conducted, that would potentially impact their ability and could potentially result in immediate cancellation of the reservation.
Mayor, Councilmember Jorgensen, if you look on page 507, about halfway through down, it talks about who the authorized users would be.
Mm-hmm.
And those are bullet points there. Then right underneath those bullets, it says, city commissions and committees and other city hall sponsored meetings and activities have priority use of the spaces and are not subject to the following policy and regulations. So there is that kind of stipulation that's baked into it. This does not say what happens when there's a conflict between city programs and library programs. And that's really one of the issues that brought this forward. In 2023, then Council Member Russ Heller came to me and said, what is the policy for this building? And I'm like, well, we don't have anything written down. And he said, don't you think that's a problem? And I said, yeah, that's probably a problem. So Council Member Russ Heller brought this forward. And so it does have that stipulation to try to answer your question on page 507. You could add in more specificity. You could change those priorities around. I can tell you just from dealing with the day-to-day that this room is booked out at least 6 months because everybody wants in here And so at some point in time, something's going to have to give. That, you know, we're going to have to prioritize who has priority when there's a conflict. What happens when there's the library's down? What happens when Fit and Fall Proof has this reserved for the next 6 months, but city employees really need to use it? You know,
Yeah, so we have had this discussion, and the city's business, from the mayor's perspective, does take priority. So if we have an emergency council meeting, for instance, and the library had it booked, they're gonna move and we'll cancel their meeting, and Lindsay understands that and gets that. So, you know, if we have something that is the city's business and it's things like that, the library, you know, has the understanding that the city's business takes priority, kind of trumps everything, right? So it doesn't happen very often. I can't even remember the last time it has happened. You know, I think, for instance, when we were scheduling an emergency meeting for in December, you know, we looked at calendars and there's an event that they were going to come in here and do some things. We said we're going to use the meeting room for that time. You're going to have to come in after we're done or come in early. But we're taking. She was fine and okay with that. So,
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Wadums, I think though there should be specific language in the event that the director changes or any other factors may, you know, change the dynamic. I like to err on the side of having a specific language that governs what the actions are and to eliminate confusion and frustration when there is potential conflict.
I would agree, but I would agree. But I think
there's a gentleman's understanding, great, but let's ensure that.
Is there a gentleman's understanding? Because I think it's like, this is City Hall, this isn't the library. The library uses this as part of their programs, but this isn't a library council chambers. That's why it's called council chambers. And so just by definition, it's not necessarily a general agreement. It's like, this is City Hall, not Library Hall. And so the library uses it for all the programs. We want them to use it. They use it all the time. But in the end, it's city council chambers. It doesn't say library chambers. And so I don't know if we have to write that in there, but in my 2 weeks, that's the understanding, having sat around these things, that this is city council chambers, and which is used by the library, not the other way around. It's not library chambers used by the council. So I don't know if we need to clarify that, Mr. Waddles, but that is my understanding and the way this is written.
Mayor, council members, I think that, I mean, specificity is always recommended for specificity. If there's conflicts or disagreements with it, I recommend specificity. I will say that Lindsay Petty-John, our library director, who's great, by the way, she drafted most of this. What happened was it sat on my desk for several months and I got several different versions from several different people, and I finally decided it was the best thing for me personally, just to make the library director happy. So, but so she drafted it. I think if you want to continue it for a couple of weeks, so I can get with Councilmember Jorgensen to make sure all her concerns are addressed, and maybe we should loop in our library director too, to make sure the library's interests are being protected.
I'd also talk, Ms. Libby, part of it was what I heard is it wasn't really broken, right? So we're almost fixing something that's not broken. Can you weigh in on that? And I mean, do you agree with that suggestion? We just clarify this and be done. I don't want to again, I'm trying to avoid creating a lot of work where we may not necessarily need some, but if we need specificity, let's get it in there and be done.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I think the important part, and Mr. Wadums and I have talked, is having a policy. Because as he stated, there have been times I have told people, I'm sorry, you cannot use the council chambers because there's no nexus to the city. But it is very important that we do have a policy to rely on. And I agree. I think getting things clear, because people change over the years, and making sure that we all know, yes, this is a city council chambers, but adding that into the wording that it is the city's property with library programs usage. That's part of the reason we do only rent the room from Tuesday through Thursday, is the hours of the library and the hours of the city. There's not a lot of availability of this room. So you're correct. It's been working fine, but I do think it's very important that we get this in writing. And to the point earlier, let's get it right, and everybody provide some input so we can get it correct.
Mr. Wild, let's make it so. So I guess there a resolution to continue this for
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
If that's what if there's a motion
Can
and
you
a
get,
second.
well, I guess, can you get it done 2 weeks?
And Mr. Mayor, excuse me, before we get to that, I have a quick question. In the document, and I think Mr. Wadhams alluded to the fact that there's, and I don't, shame on me, I don't know this building as well as I probably should. This room, a conference room downstairs, and did you say there's conference rooms upstairs?
Mayor, Councilmember Rasmussen, there are 2 conference rooms upstairs. One is more open to the public than the other. The other one's kind of locked down because it has like NCICs and criminal background checks and stuff. So, but there are 2 that people can reserve upstairs.
Okay.
There is this one room downstairs. I think technically it's the library room and not the city's room, although I don't know who made that decision 20 years ago because I certainly haven't seen it in writing. I don't know
Yeah,
why.
kind
I don't know why the library.
But we'll
thinks
get
it's that room.
specific, but I think the library needs a conference room, so they've had control of that downstairs conference room. And then the mayor's conference room has been one for other stuff, and that goes through Lisa. And then the other one is kind of a locked door. It's more of a legal conference room for what he says. And so that way we have the large upstairs mayor's conference room is for the general public, kind of this policy, but the library gets control of this because they can have their board meetings. So that's I think how we ought to keep it.
And I'm sorry to try to finish up on your answer.
Sure.
Or your answer to your question. The main conference room upstairs that we call the mayor's conference room, we just recently put a lock on it. So people that were meeting in there can't just be walking through the administrative wing of the offices. And I asked for that, and Mr. Schmidt was great to finally get me a lock because God bless the pollinator gardens people, but they would show it that their meetings were like 5 o'clock in that room, and then they just start walking through the halls. And I'd be there working. It's like, who are you? And they're like, we're the pollinators. And I'm like, well, that's great, but this area is not open to the public.
Well, and I appreciate that you read my mind because where I'm going with conference rooms upstairs, I mean, it's the building for the public, but at the same time, we have employees here, and I was just thinking about security and maybe we should lock those down just as an idea and have all these down here in use, but it's something feels a little unsecure about having the rooms upstairs.
And both of them are locked.
Okay.
You can't get into the mayor's office.
Okay.
Without going through a lock, and you can't get into the legal conference room without going through a lock.
Fair enough.
But let's just polish that up a little bit, Charles, on that. So any further questions? Resolution to continue this?
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to continue resolution 1235-26 to date certain of February 9th.
Correct. Give enough time?
Yeah, I mean, if Councilmember Jorgensen is not happy on this one, or Councilmember Carver Herbert is not happy on the previous one, I'll ask for another continuance to make sure the council is happy.
Got it. Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Clerk, call roll, please.
Councilmember Page?
Yes.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert?
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes.
All right, we're 2 for 2 on continuing resolutions. Let's see what happens with this last one. So this is adopting fees for safe-built services. Director Thornborough.
Mayor and members of the council, hello again. This resolution is to request for fee increases for Safe Built, and not because your staff is wanting to ask for that, but because Safe Built, our contracted services for building services, is requesting the fee increases. The current contract notes that based on the consumer price index, they can request up to 4% increase per year. This year, they have noted another clause, clause number 2 in the agreement, basically allowing them to renegotiate. The fee increases that they've requested are between 2 and 27% based on the different fee types. Many of the fee types really don't matter too much. For example, there's 3 different planning fees that we've never utilized. All the planning has been done in-house to date. The biggest notable increase would be inspections from $90.52 to $110 per hour. That's notable because the way those fees work, the city receives, based on project value, a lump sum. And then per inspection, we're paying out the fees. And so the staff would suggest that this is coming pretty quickly as well. They sent this after Christmas, and we're hoping to get it pushed through pretty quickly. But staff would suggest that we need to look at our fee structures to make sure that we're accounting for those fee increases. And so that is the fee with the most significant impact. However, hopefully it's slightly tempered by the fact that they've added another fee type, and they're calling minor inspections, and that would be a reduction from the $90.52 to $75. And then the other items, again, maybe a slight fee increase to make sure that we're capturing those fees. We're capturing enough now, but also to capture the administration of the fees. And with that, I stand for questions.
Thank you, Director Thornborough. Any questions? Mr. Waters?
Just briefly, Mayor, members of the council, I just wanted to remind you that this comes around every year, and I was looking at my notes in this file from 2023. So in 2023, my notes are, and I remember this, it was Councilmember Jorgensen, but Councilmember Jorgensen wants me to try and negotiate less than a 4% CPI annual cap. That was on February 14th, 23. Then on February 21, 23, I did negotiate it. I got it down from 4% to 3%. So I don't know if there's any wiggle room on these new rate increases that they want. I don't know if it's more than more, is it 4% or more? I don't know, but I have not been tasked with negotiating with them. Maybe you could save a percent if you wanted to ask them, like in 2023. But I don't have any. That's my only comment on this.
Thoughts, Mr. Thornborough?
Mayor and members of the council, they did have a fee that the staff member balked at. They had requested for plan review instead of 50% of the city's fees for 55% of the city's fees. And I said that I didn't think that was appropriate because there's not a way for the city to then turn around and recuperate that cost. And I asked if they could provide the request, at least in a way that the city could then recuperate the cost instead of having it come out of the city share. That is the negotiation that has occurred. They did remove that and said, we'll look at it again next year. They did remove that request, but the percentage fees, staff has not tried to negotiate at this point in time.
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Thornborough. So are there performance standards in place for them to be compensated?
Mayor, Councilmember Carver Herbert. I apologize.
WCH,
There are some performance standards, yes. For example, based on the type of review, they have X number of days based on the type of review that they have to turn around their first, second, third reviews on projects. Let me think if there's another performance, but yes, the initial contract does have certain specifications that are included.
So I have a question, Mr. Thornborough. So if our contract says no more than a 3% annual increase, so I guess it's been 2 years since we've had this, so then they would theoretically get a 6% increase. Am I doing my math right? What's your feeling on going back to them and saying, hey, the contract says this, council, brought that up. And so, we're obviously you're entitled to an increase and we understand that and costs have gone up, but we also have a contract. So what's your thoughts on going back and telling that, because that Mr. Waters has a point there.
Mayor, I'm certainly happy to do that. They did have an increase last year, I believe, so
Yeah.
they wouldn't be able to go
So, okay.
on a combined CPI.
So they're taking it
increase.
every year, right? So now they're going above that. And then and we have a solid businesswoman here and
Fiscal hawk.
physical hawk, Councilmember Jorgensen. I want to just give them that feedback. It's like, yeah, what's the point of a contract if we don't follow the contract? So I don't know what your feelings are on that, council members, but I'll defer.
My
to you,
question
Council
is
President.
this, Mr. Mayor, who competes with Safe Build?
Mayor, Council President Page, we have another contract, and that's with the state Doppel Division of Building, or Division of Professional Licensing, and then the building services are within that. And so there is a level of competition there. There are the benefits and then and the negative components of both contracts. And then outside of that, in the past, the city has contracted with other local jurisdictions to provide the services. That also has that can be a little bit more clunky because the cities obviously are going to want to address their own municipalities first, and they are employees of those municipalities. And so it's my opinion that those can not be in the city's best interest. And then I could do research to see if there's others out there. I know that there could be smaller providers. There was a gentleman in the past that had worked for different, I think he had worked for Doppel when it was DBS, and he was trying to start a business as well. One of the components with Safe Built that is a little bit more difficult, they're big, they're a national company. And so the plan reviews are great. They have somebody locally that can act as a building official, and there are inspectors. But they don't have somebody locally that meets the state criteria for the trades permits. And if you go with a smaller company, then you start running into some of those issues very quickly. Structural engineer reviews, who's administering the components that you might need in a holistic building review and inspection service.
So I'm hearing we really need to dance with this company. Is that the short answer?
I would suggest at least a year's lead time, unless there's an emergency reason to not dance with the company.
Is there, Director Thornbar, so, in this case, we don't want to make you the bad cop, right? More be the messenger, I guess. Is there a risk that they would drop their contract with the city if we said no, and it's like, well, we don't want to do business with Garden City? Or is it more like, I went to the council and they pointed to the contract, what are you, what can you do about, work with us on this, because we do have a contract. We like working with you. We understand that. We obviously want to have a good relationship with them. So, you know them better than anybody. What are your thoughts on that?
Mayor, I certainly think we could have a conversation with them, a friendly conversation, requesting more of a justification, and see if they'd be willing to reduce their request. And then if they have a strong justification, they would need to articulate that to the council.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. All right.
Mr. Mayor, Director Thornborough and Mr. Wadhams. Given Mr. Wadhams' comments, this will probably come as no surprise. However, I do believe that based on my business experience, a lot of folks that hold a contract tend to send in escalations, assuming that they're going to be rubber stamped. I also know that over the course of the past couple of years, there's been true increases in costs, rather, whether it's tariffs or hard costs of components. And I know that also translates to labor. However, I have never seen a contract come in with a 27% or 28% increase, regardless of whether we're using those fees or not. That is a serious red flag to me. And I would strongly encourage that we take this back. And if there is a big step in percentage increase to fees, that we ask for time to accommodate that, and in meaning that, hey, if you need to see an escalation to that percentage, you give us time. So we would take a 3% in Q1, another 3% in Q2, and potentially a third increase in Q3, but certainly to absorb a jump of that amount all it without much notice is like, that's just not good business practice.
Or justification.
Yeah. So again, my question and my ask is go back and see what they're willing to negotiate and absolutely get rid of. Like, I'm just absolutely floored that anybody would come to any business partner and say, here's a 28% or 27% or 22% increase. That to me needs serious justification and explanation. Sorry, I got fired up there.
Oh, that's why we're here, man. Yeah, it's good.
Mr. Mayor, Ms. Thornborough, just another follow-up question about other options. Are there any other smaller cities that are reliant on this company? Just throwing an idea. Obviously, this is not something to tackle in the short term, but maybe a little bit long-term thinking is maybe some of these smaller cities banding together and coming up with some sort of a consortium to provide services. Just an idea I'm throwing out there.
Mr. Mayor, can I just, and I know it's getting late, but can I give some just historical context? When I started here, these services were in-house, you know, and then it just turned out it didn't pencil. And so a business decision was made to contract it out. And then we, like what Ms. Thornborough referenced, we contracted with the city of Boise for years, and that worked until it didn't work. And then we went to these, you know, these contractors. But there's several different ways in the long term. You could bring it back in-house if it penciled. I doubt it would. You could, but you do have options. Also, I don't think we've ever put this out for bid. We've used it as either sole source or professional services to get around the procurement laws. But we could also put this out for bid, RFP or RFQ or something. But I think it probably is sole source. I don't know, other than Doppel and Safe Built. I don't even know if there's anybody else out there.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Waters. Of course. Pleasure, council.
Mayor, I might add, years ago, we did try to go out for a bid just for matters like code enforcement, dangerous building, et cetera. And I believe that's where I remember the individual that I referenced. And he may have been the only company that responded.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I would add comment that I would prefer, and I'm positive Ms. Leiby and Ms. Thornborough would agree, to avoid an RFP or an RFQ. But I also believe that if you go back and explain to them that this really raised a bunch of red flags, that they would likely be amenable to further conversations regarding the fees. Reiterate, probably don't want to go to bid if we can get them to come to the table.
Right.
But
I think they will.
would be willing to move down that path if they're not reasonable.
Anything else? No motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman.
I would move to continue resolution 1238-26 to a date certain of February 9th. Is
Does
that enough?
that give you time, Jenna? Oh, we're 3 for 3. All right.
Second.
Second, all right. Clerk, call roll, please.
Councilmember Rasmussen?
Yes.
Councilmember Carver Herbert?
Yes.
Councilmember Jorgensen?
Yes.
Councilmember Page?
Yes.
Okay, wow, finished G. Any unfinished business? Hearing none. Any new business? No executive session this time. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Oh, second, yep, Brett, sorry. I did that last time too, when I got sworn in. I was just eager to go home. So we had a motion, a second by Council Member Rasmussen. All in favor, say aye.
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 Meeting is adjourned.